welcome to Cardboard Chemistry, where we talk about everything and anything related to Magic the Gathering. I'm the beaker in your speaker, a test tube dude, the goat in a lab coat, just a slippery boggle in goggles. I'm your host, MTG Labman, and without further ado, let's get into our topic for today. Alright, today's topic is just a quick brief summary of what I think of the overall spoilers released for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle set so far. So, I have the Wizards site pulled up with the current card image gallery, so I'm just going to go through what each card does and my opinions, if it's a good card, better in the 99, can be a feasible commander. So without further ado, let's get started. We're going to start with white. First card is Leonardo Sewer Samurai. It's a 4 CMC legendary creature mutant ninja turtle samurai. 3 colorless, 1 white pip for its mana cost. It does have sneak for 2 colorless and 2 white. Sneak is a reskinned mechanic for ninjutsu, so you return an unblocked attacker to your hand and you can cast this card for its sneak cost. Leonardo has double strike, and the ability is during your turn you may cast creature spells with power toughness 1 or less from your graveyard. If you cast a spell this way, that creature enters with a finality counter on it. And basically, if a creature with a finality counter on it would die, you exile it instead. And Leonardo has a base power and toughness 3/3. My personal opinion, this isn't a pilot for your commander deck. I think this is a good card in the 99. Not specifically for the Ninja Turtles, but if you're running like a Delney Streetwise Lookout, where you're worried about creatures with power 2 or less, this can actually be a pretty good reanimate to bring back your flicker effect. Now granted, you could then flicker that creature with a finality counter on it to remove the finality counter on it. So, pretty good, solid choice for a card in the 99, not so much a card at the head of your commander deck. Next card in white is Turtles Forever. Again, 3 colorless and 1 white, so 4 CMC overall. It's an instant, and it says search your library and or outside the game for exactly 4 legendary creature cards you own with different names. Then reveal the cards. An opponent chooses 2 of them, put the chosen cards into your hand, and shuffle the rest into your library. So, first off, the artwork of this card is great. It has iterations of the Turtles throughout the years. It even has a nod to the live-action Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movies that I grew up with. So, really love the artwork on this card. Really different effect to see on a card. I don't know how they're going to have this in Commander, or if it's even going to be Commander legal, due to the fact that you are able to search outside the game for cards to add to the deck. But a really powerful tutor effect. You can tutor up 4 of your best creatures, and you have a 50% chance of at least getting 2 of the 4 creatures. So I think that's a really strong card. Probably going to be more expensive card, especially if it is commander legal, because 4 mana for 4 creatures, tutoring in white seems like a bargain. Next card is another new card, Leonardo Worldly Warrior. like most Universe Beyond sets, most of the legendary creatures are going to have multiple iterations of the card. This is the second iteration we've seen of Leonardo so far. It's a 5/5 for 8 CMC. Granted, it's 7 colorless, 1 white, and then its first ability is this spell costs 1 less to cast for each creature you control. And it's a 5/5 with double strike. So, like I said, probably not going to be running this as your commander for a deck. Good in the 99, especially for creature token decks, because you can easily drop this for 1 mana if you have 7 tokens on the battlefield. So, pretty good card. Not anything groundbreaking, earth-shattering, but pretty solid. The last card is a reskin for white so far. It's Unbreakable Formation. Creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. If you cast this during your main phase, you put a +1/+1 counter on each of your creatures. They gain vigilance until end of turn. Alright, this is an offensive/defensive spell. Defensive, you can use it on any turn to give all of your creatures indestructible. Offensive, you get the added benefit of giving your creatures +1/+1 in vigilance that you can swing out without worry, because all of your creatures will have indestructible for that turn. I do like the artwork on this with all the turtles, Casey Jones, Bebop, and Rocksteady all on the artwork, so solid choice overall. Next we'll move on to blue. First card we have from blue for spoil is April O'Neil, Hacktivist. And she's a 1/5 for 3 colorless and 1 blue. And she has, at the beginning of your end step, draw a card for each card type among spells you've cast this turn. This is actually a really cool ability. I actually really like this ability. You can do some pretty fun things with this. Artifact creature, if you're casting artifact creature spells, you get 2 different types from that. If you're casting enchantment creature spells, you get 2 different types from that. So I could see where you build kind of a blue Delirium-esque deck where you have multiple types on cards, and you can cast an instant, cast an artifact creature. That's 3 card types shown, and you get to draw 3 cards at the beginning of your end step. Could be a pilot, could also be pretty good in the 99. But if you have her as a pilot, it is a mono blue restriction, so I think it'd be a fun build, but also pretty good in the 99. Next we have Krang, Mastermind. It's 6 colorless and 2 blue pips. And it's a legendary artifact creature. Utrom Warrior. Has affinity for artifacts, so costs 1 less to cast for each artifact you control. And then when Krang enters, if you have fewer than 4 cards in hand, draw cards equal to the difference. And then Krang gets +1/+0 for each other artifact you control. I really like this card. I'm already eyeing it up. I run a Mendicant Core Guidelight Commander deck, and with Krang getting +1/+0 for each other artifact you control, he's a shoo-in for that deck. Pretty solid if you are low on hand size, don't have a lot of draw. This at least gives you a little bit of card advantage when you cast him. And depending on the amount of artifacts you're running, you could cast this for 2 blue. So, pretty solid choice. I'd say most likely better in the 99. I wouldn't really consider running it as a face commander, but solid card overall. Next we have Donatello Rad Scientist. Also, like every turtle in this set, you're going to have multiple copies of the turtles. So here we have a first iteration of Donatello. It's 5 colorless and 1 blue, so 6 CMC total. It's a 5/6 with vigilance. It's kind of nice. When Donatello enters, tap up to 3 target creatures your opponents control. Put a stun counter on each of them. So you're effectively locking down 3 creatures for a turn. It's a pretty powerful effect, but it's also 6 CMC and it's not a cost reducer. I wouldn't consider this in an aspect of being a face commander for a deck, but I could see it in the 99, especially for like a Hilda of the Icy Crown, where you're already trying to tap down your opponent's creatures. Or, just a utility creature to neutralize some blockers when you go in for an attack. Next card is Donnie and April, a Dorkable Duo. I love the name. It's 4 colorless and 1 blue for a 3/3. And it says, when Donnie and April enter, choose one or both. Each mode must target a different player. Target player draws 2 cards, and target player returns an artifact, instant, or sorcery card from their graveyard to their hand. Like I said, this is going to be better in the 99. I wouldn't consider running this as a face commander. You could if you're flickering or cloning it, if you want to keep having yourself draw 2 cards. But I think this actually works really well in the April deck. If you have this as well, you could return an artifact, instant, or sorcery card from your hand to your hand, and then you could trigger April O'Neil's ability again. But I think most of the time, if you're casting this, you're probably going to target yourself with the draw 2 cards, and then depending on your opponent, choose artifact, instant, or sorcery card from their graveyard to their hand. Next we have the black cards that are spoiled. And first we have Super Shredder. And with Super Shredder, his ability is whenever another permanent leaves the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on Super Shredder. And he's a 1/1 with Menace for 1 and a black mana pip. So I actually like Shredder. I think it's a really cool design. It's not limited to whenever a creature leaves the battlefield. So your opponent's cracking fetch lands, or cracking treasure tokens, or clues, food, flickering things. Because it's not when it dies, it's only when it leaves the battlefield. If you're playing warp creatures, Shredder's just continuously getting bigger. Definitely, I would lean more towards a 99 in the 99 creature, but I could see it in as a face commander. As a face commander, though, my mind straight goes to a Turgid-esque kind of build where you're constantly having your opponents sacrifice creatures with edict effects, and basically continuously making sure the board's clear for a Shredder that is progressively getting larger, and then just swinging in with commander damage for a Voltron edict deck. Next we have Splinter, the Mentor. This is probably my least favorite treatment on this card. I think Splinter could have been a better design. It's a 2/2 for 1 and 1 black with Menace. And his ability is whenever Splinter or another non-token creature you control leaves the battlefield, create a mutagen token. And with that, I think he'd be okay in the 99. I wouldn't run him as a face. The mutagen token in and of itself, from what I've seen so far, doesn't seem that powerful. It's another artifact that you can kind of to sack to give a creature +1/+1, a little bit of an added benefit. But, I think Splinter as the teacher for the turtle should have had the mentor ability itself, or something to do with lessons. I know lessons are coming back for Avatar, so I really think they could have leaned into Splinter being the turtle's teacher. There was a reskin Dark Ritual. Dark Ritual is good in any mono black deck, any deck that runs heavy in black mana. I'm not going to run over that card too much. We'll move to red. We have Casey Jones, Jury Rig Justicar, 1 in a red, 2/1 with haste, and when he enters, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal an artifact card from among them and put it into your hand, and then put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. I'm really hoping they come out with a rare or legendary version of, or mythic version of Casey. As the uncommon, it's good in probably an equipment deck. Wouldn't run it as a commander, maybe as a utility to try to dig a little bit to find an equipment you're looking for, but nothing super cool or groundbreaking with that one. Next we have Raphael's Technique. It's an instant for 4 and 2 red. It does have sneak, and this is the first time we're seeing a ninjutsu ability on a sorcery. I know we have some free running that was exclusive to Assassins for Assassin's Creed or Commander. So now we have Raphael's Technique with sneak, 2 in a red. And it says each player may discard their hand and then draw 7 cards. So basically a Wheel of Fortune on a card. So another strong card. If you're running Nekusar, if you're running a Wheels deck, probably a pretty good addition to add to those decks. I did just note that I skipped over the partnered turtles. I'll go through those at the end of the episode just to wrap up for each of the partnered turtles. Next, we'll move on to Raphael Tag Team Tough. 4 and 2 red for a 5/6 with Menace. Whenever Raphael deals combat damage to a player for the first time each turn, untap all attacking creatures. After this combat phase, there is an additional combat phase. So another multiple combat phase creature. It does have Menace, which is a little bit of evasion. But I wouldn't really consider running this over some of the extra combat step creatures, especially for 6 mana. I could see crossing universes and having this in a Jonah Jameson deck as a way to get extra combats with your menace creatures. 5/6 is a pretty solid body, but you are paying 6 for it. And yeah, definitely better in the 99 and not as the lead commander of your deck. Move on to green. Another 6 CMC creature, Michelangelo on the scene. He's a 2/2 for 6 mana, which seems like a steep price tag, but he does enter the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on him for each land you control. So he is a 2/2, but when you cast him, he would be an 8/8 with trample. And he does have, when Michelangelo dies, return this card to your hand. So I could see some niche situations where you actually run this as your commander, because you can avoid the commander tax. When he dies, you just return him to your hand, cast him for 6. 8/8, I mean, that's 3 swings with the commander for a commander damage kill on an opponent. So yeah, I could see Michelangelo as a lead commander for a deck. I could also see him as a pretty powerful in the 99, especially in like a landfall deck. Those decks usually run 40 plus lands. You're dropping multiple lands a turn. You could get Michelangelo out pretty quickly, and then you have a 8/8, 9/9, 10/10 body with trample that you can swing in on opponents. So, pretty solid card. They did spoil reskin Doubling Season. We all know Doubling Season's a powerhouse, enabler for doubling tokens, doubling +1/+1 counters. So it's good to see a reprint. Hopefully, it drops the price of some of the current prints of Doubling Season, because I think that's sitting at like a $35-$40 card right now. All right, let's move on to multicolor. First off, Bebop and Rocksteady. 1 and 2 hybrid Golgari, black and green mana symbols. Whenever Bebop and Rocksteady attack or block, sacrifice a permanent unless you discard a card. It is a 7/5 for 3. So it is a huge body, but then again, it does have the downside of whenever you attack or block, you have to sacrifice a permanent unless you discard a card. Could be an interesting commander to build if you're going, aristocrat in Golgari. The first thing that comes to mind when I see this card is Gitrog, the Ravenous Ride from Outlaws of Thunder Junction, and I think this card would slot perfectly in the 99 there. So interesting card. I probably wouldn't run it as a commander, but I could see it in the 99 of some decks. We'll move on to Heroes in a Half Shell. I know there's some speculation. I think this is probably going to be the backup commander to the 5-color Precon for the Ninja Turtle set. It's Wooburg, so 1 of each color. 5/5 with Vigilance, Menace, Trample, and Haste, which is good. And then whenever 1 or more mutants, ninjas, and or turtles you control deal combat damage to a player, put a +1/+1 counter on each of those creatures and draw a card. So definitely the face commander of a commander deck if you build a commander deck. I do like the fact that it opens up to both ninjas, turtles, and mutants, because it gives you a little bit more representation of some creature types that haven't been fully represented in the past. So with those creatures, if you hit an opponent, right, you can attack your other 3 opponents, at most draw 3 cards a turn. You're not going to get a card for each mutant, turtle, or ninja attacking, but they will get +1/+1 counters. So I could see this being run as a head commander for Ninja Turtle deck, or even bringing back some of the mutants from Ravnica and the mutants that were introduced in Fallout. I think it would be a really unique design, and even the mutant legendary creature from Final Fantasy could be an addition to this deck, just to deal with the mutants. We're going to move on. I'll go back and cover each of the partner turtles. So we'll go back to white, and we'll go to Leonardo the Balance. 3 colorless and 1 white, so 4 CMC overall. Leo is the leader of the Ninja Turtles, so as the partner commander, he does have a Wooburg activated cost, so he can be the face commander for 5-color Ninja Turtles deck. But if you do want to run partners, you'll have to run Leo as one of the partners in the command zone, and then one of his brothers as the partner commander. So Leo has, whenever a token you control enters, you may put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Do this only once each turn. And then Wooburg, creatures you control gain Menace, Trample, and Lifelink until end of turn. And it's a 3/3 with partner character select, so it'll only work with character select partners. And of course, each of the turtles, as well as Splinter, does have character select. So you could even partner up Leo with Master Splinter. I do like it's whenever a token you control enters. I don't like the fact that it's only once each turn. Granted, you can add abilities that will create or add creatures into the mix that create a token each turn, and that's probably going to be your best bet if you're running Leo as one of your partner commanders. But I honestly think I'd probably run the Heroes in a Half Shell as the commander instead of the partners of the brothers. Especially when you look at Leo, that already costs 4 CMC, and the Heroes in a Half Shell are 5 CMC. Move on to the copy of Donatello that has partner character select. Donatello the Brains, 2 in a blue, 2/4, and then if one or more tokens would be created under your control, those tokens plus a mutagen token are created instead. Like I said, you could pair this with Leo. It would work creating tokens, and then you create an additional mutagen token. But it's more of a win more or add a benefit, with something like Academy Manufacturer, where you're creating an artifact, or where you're creating a treasure, a clue, and a food. Now this is basically a worse version of that, where when you're creating a token, you're also creating a mutagen. Probably if I were to partner something with Leo, I wouldn't pick Dawn. I'd have Dawn in the 99, but not as the partner to Leo at the head of the deck. The partner version of Raphael is Raphael the Muscle, 4 colorless and a red, so 5 CMC. Double all damage that creatures you control with counters on them would deal. And then whenever he enters, you create a Mutant token. Honestly, probably a really solid choice. I think the Mutant token does give +1/+1 counters. I'll cover that at the end. But being able to double all the damage creatures you control would deal, I could see this even being run as a face commander of a mono red like modified deck. So solid, probably up there as one of the top tier choices to pick as a partner with Leo. And then finally we have Michelangelo the Heart, 1 colorless and 1 green, a 2/1 with trample. Raid the Fridge, which I find extremely funny and a good callback to how Mikey's always wanting the pizza. At the beginning of your second main phase, if you attack this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature and create a food token. And this is where the character select and the partner mechanic kind of hits a snag with the turtles. Like Mikey and Raphael work really good together as partners because you can attack and then you can put a +1/+1 counter, and then of course the next turn around, Raphael will give anything with a counter on it the ability to deal double damage, where if you want to run 5 color, you're stuck with Leo in the command zone. So I could see Gruul Turtles as well as a deck that might emerge out of this as a strong contender for a powerful deck. And lastly, I'm just going to go over the Mutant token because there are some boss cards. I haven't read full in depth of what the boss cards we used. I think it's going to be a different type of format play, and so those cards most likely are not going to be legal in the Commander format. So I'm just going to skip those for now and talk about the Mutant token that's created. It's a colorless artifact token. 1 and tap, sacrifice this token, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. And you can only activate it as a sorcery. So no cracking your mutagens on opponents' turns, which I think is kind of too restrictive for the token. I think if you had the ability to pay 1, clues you can crack on opponents' turns, foods, and now we're restricted to a token that can only be sacrificed on your turn. So it's kind of restrictive, and the fact that it's only a +1/+1 counter on a creature, and it's only a single creature. I mean, it is a free +1/+1, 1 mana for a +1/+1 counter. I just feel like they could have done more with the mutagen. In the movies and the comics, it's typically referred to as ooze. I would have liked to have seen even just to edit to the text of put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, it becomes an ooze in addition to its other types. or it creates an ooze token, something referring back to the ooze. I mean, it could be. I do run a Slime Against Humanity deck, and I like the ooze creature type, but I just feel like it could have been a little bit more flavorful with the the utility of it. We have mana now, we have card draw, we have life gain. I guess running down the list of things, adding counters is a typical mechanic in Magic. So I can see where it's basically the next evolution down the line of what a token can do. That being said, though, I mean, I'm really excited. I grew up with the Turtles as a kid, and I'm looking forward to what else they release. Once again, thank you guys for listening, and I'll catch up with you at a later time. Thank you.